Okay. So James Bond has ego, too much ego.
Yeah.
What if he is ego? Okay. And then
I mean, what
what?
if he is what I mean like James Bond is pure id.
No, he's ego. He's ego because he's aware of himself, but he's like
Okay.
obsessed with himself, you know? So he's got too much ego. And then how do you balance how do you balance ego? You balance it with like what Vesper is, like intellect. Like she's intellect. She's smart,
Well,
she knows
well,
things, she remembers
well,
all the numbers, you
well,
know.
well, well, well ego is like rational and conscious. Like super ego is like maturity.
And who's the superego?
Uh, M.
And doesn't it make sense? Because the C or the MI6 is always aware of everything all the time. They're constantly tracking all of James Bond's movements. They're also like guiding him places. Like, go do this, go do that. This is your mission, you know? And the ego is like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm going to do it the best. But he doesn't know why.
I think James Bond has a pretty developed id. I think he's like there's a lot of like I want this drink, I want to kiss this woman. I want
The id and the ego are sort of like connected, you know? The ego serves the id without that
yeah,
guiding
but like the
force,
the, the, the the ego is supposed to like meter your impulses. And also like none of like
Well, maybe I'm using the wrong words, okay? But
yeah.
essentially, like James Bond just acts and does things and is selfish and, does things for himself. And
Yeah.
then to balance that, you don't you don't necessarily need another person, but you need a balanced psychology. So this is all psychological, okay? So Vesper represents that balancing force, that kind of feminine side where it's like rein in your ego, don't go all crazy, don't lose all my money, just keep yourself reined in a bit. And that's what her role is in this psychological sort of reading of it. And then M is overlooking the whole thing and giving guidance and stuff. And that also happens in your head. And these things are developed one by one, okay? So what's going on with James Bond this whole time is he's becoming a psychologically developed man,
So
or
I
character. And all
like
three of these all three of these parts, they act in relation to each other, and sometimes one takes over, and it's like when to let one take over and when to push back one and everything like that. So it's like it's a messy process to figure all this out, and that's what's going on in the movie.
so like by my reading of the movie, James Bond needs M. M is a necessary constraint on his ridiculous behavior.
Yeah.
But I feel like Vesper is a distraction pulling him away from who he needs to be. Like
No,
he's
no, she saves him multiple times in the movie.
I mean she is a heroic character and does heroic things and she does save the day a couple times.
And
But
she provides like the money, she provides the accounts and all that stuff. Like she's the intellect part of him.
but Vesper doesn't curb that behavior at all.
No, no, and it's true, but in later on, I think she does. In other instances, I think she does. Doesn't she
Yes.
seem like the force that is there to just be like, James, I wouldn't do that, you know?
Yeah, but like that never turns out. Like
I
like
feel like it. I feel
every
like it does. I
because
forget.
I don't think she ever. I don't think like at all the points where they disagree, I think he's right. Like it seems like she's like this
Well, okay, so
this
maybe
force pulling him away from all of the things that make James Bond James Bond.
no. Well,
And
what's yeah,
she wants him to take fewer risks and be less of a horn dog and to be and then eventually to like leave the super spy life entirely. And then
yeah.
after she dies, he's like, "Oh my god, this was all a mistake. I really need to go back to being a rambunctious asshole." And like that's who I am. That's how I can continue to do all of my spy shit is by leaning into all of my James Bondy traits.
Not so, because I felt like the very end of the movie, it was so the whole time I felt like James Bond, started the movie with an ego out of control, and then he was paired with Vesper, and Vesper sort of had this civilizing effect on him to some degree. And then she pulled him way too far into being civilized, to the point he had no ego, you know, when they were in Venice.
At some point, he
Yeah.
says like, "Oh, one of us is going to have to get a job at some point."
I
Haha.
know. I know. Yeah. That was a good. And then, did you see the name of the ship that they were on?
No.
Spirit. It was sort of a Icarus sort of thing where there were they were like two in Fantasyland or something. Like they were like trying to deny the world, when they
What?
were in Venice. And it's like, nope, you're not angels. This isn't
Yeah.
heaven, you're riding on this boat called Spirit, while there's this dark thing that's still surrounding you and you haven't dealt with yet. But anyway, so at the very, very end, so he goes to Venice and he goes too far in the other direction of egolessness and he gets rid of his armor.
Yeah, he's too domestic.
Yeah, he's too domestic. And then he has to come back. And at the very end, he kills the guy. He's wearing his armor again, the tailored suit that she
Hmm.
made for him. And finally, there's this shot looking up at him. He looks so epic. And that's when he finally says, the name's Bond, James Bond. He's become himself. He's become
Yeah.
fully integrated
Then,
with
then, then, then roll
Vesper's
credits with the
influence.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then roll credits with the James Bond theme with the bass guitar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Uh,
it feels like a complete transformation, and it might be the spirit of Vesper that's in him because I think she's dead